I spent 36 years waiting for my family to love me. So when my sister Rachel moved in after her divorce and started bringing me chamomile tea every night, I thought my prayers had finally been answered. She'd sit on the edge of my bed, hand me the warm cup, and smile. "Drink it. It'll help you sleep better." I drank every drop, every single night, for a year. Then my hair started falling out in clumps. My hands trembled so badly I couldn't hold a pen. I collapsed at work, my heart racing, my vision blurring, my legs giving out beneath me. The doctors ran test after test. Nothing made sense. Until one evening, a toxicology specialist walked into my hospital room with 2 police officers behind him. He looked at my chart, then at me. His face went pale. "Ms. Boyd," he said slowly, "I need to ask you something. Who's been preparing your food and drinks?" When I answered, he reached for his phone. "Call 911, now." Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you didn't see the knife until it was already in your back? My name is Lindsay Boyd. I'm 36 years old, a financial analyst at a respected firm in Boston. On paper, my life looks like a success story, a career I built from nothing, a house I bought on my own savings I managed carefully for years. But beneath all of that, there's a truth I never told anyone. I spent my entire life feeling invisible to the people who were supposed to love me most. Growing up, I was always the one who doesn't need attention. My parents never remembered my birthdays without a reminder. They never asked about my grades, my promotions, my dreams. Everything I achieved was treated as expected, never celebrated. Meanwhile, my younger sister Rachel received all the love I hungered for. She was praised for the smallest things, protected from every consequence, treated like she was made of something precious while I was made of something ordinary. I learned early that love in my family was a limited resource, and it all went to Rachel. I told myself I didn't need it. I built my life without their support. I graduated, got hired, worked my way up, bought my house. I did everything right. But late at night, alone in that house, I still felt that hollow ache, the longing to matter to my own family. Rachel's life took a different path. The golden child crumbled under the weight of adulthood. Her marriage lasted 4 years before her husband filed for divorce and kept the house. Her career stalled in a part-time sales job that barely covered her expenses. And her finances, I didn't know the full picture then, but she was drowning in over $100,000 of debt. Credit cards, a car loan, a personal loan from someone who was threatening to take her to court. The sister who had everything was left with nothing. And I think that's when something inside her broke. 6 months before her divorce was finalized, Rachel called me out of the blue. She sounded different, softer, more caring than I'd ever heard her. She said she'd been thinking about me, worrying about me living alone. She wanted to do something for me. A life insurance policy, she explained. She'd pay the premiums herself. "Just in case anything ever happens," she said. "Let me take care of this for you. It's my gift." I was so touched I almost cried. For the first time in my life, someone in my family was thinking about me. I signed the papers without hesitation. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to ruin the moment with suspicion. When her divorce was final and she had nowhere to go, she called again, crying this time. She needed a place to stay. Just for a few weeks. Just until she got back on her feet. Our mother called too, reinforcing the request, "Help your sister Lindsay. She's going through hell." So I said yes. I always said yes. 3 months passed. Rachel was still there. She claimed to be job hunting, getting her life together. And every night, she brought me a cup of chamomile tea. She'd sit on the edge of my bed, hand me the warm cup, and smile. "I made this special for you. It'll help you sleep better." I drank it gratefully. I felt seen. I felt cared for. I ignored the small things that felt off, the way her eyes hardened. When I mentioned work, the coldness that flickered across her face when I came home happy. One night after I returned from celebrating a promotion with colleagues, she watched me and said quietly, "Must be nice, having your whole life figured out while some of us are still struggling." No congratulations, no warmth, just that cold observation. I brushed it off. She was hurting. She needed grace. A week later, she asked casually if I'd updated my will recently. "Just thinking about practical things," she said. I didn't think twice about it. I should have. The months that followed proved just how wrong I had been to ignore those warning signs. By the 8th month of Rachel living with me, My body had become a stranger. It started slowly at first, a tiredness that sleep couldn't fix, a fog in my mind that made simple tasks feel impossible. I blamed it on work. I blamed it on stress. I blamed it on getting older. But deep down, something felt terribly wrong. The collapse happened during a client meeting. One moment I was presenting quarterly projections, and the next moment the room was spinning. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. My vision blurred until the faces around me became smears of color. My hands shook so violently, I knocked my water glass off the table. I heard someone shout my name, and then I was on the floor staring up at fluorescent lights, wondering if I was dying. The ambulance took me to the emergency room. They ran tests. They took blood. They hooked me up to machines that beeped and hummed. The doctors frowned at their clipboards and asked me questions I couldn't answer. Had I been exposed to any toxins? Was I taking any new medications? Had I traveled recently? No. I had done nothing different. I had just been living my life, drinking my tea, trusting my sister. The blood work showed abnormalities, but nothing that pointed to a clear diagnosis. My liver enzymes were elevated. My nervous system showed signs of damage. But the cause remained a mystery. The doctors talked about stress burnout, possible autoimmune disorders. They scheduled follow-up appointments and sent me home with a prescription for rest. But the symptom that terrified me most had nothing to do with what the machines could measure. My hair was falling out. Not a strand here or there the way it does for everyone. Clumps, handfuls. Every time I showered, the drain clogged with my own hair. Every time I brushed, the bristles came away full. I would find strands on my pillow, on my clothes, floating in my food. I looked in the mirror and saw patches of scalp showing through where thick hair used to be. I looked like I was dying. Maybe I was. Rachel was there when I got home from the hospital. She ran to me with tears streaming down her face, wrapped her arms around me, and held me like I was the most precious thing in the world. "I was so scared," she whispered. "What would I do without you?" She helped me to bed, brought me soup, adjusted my pillows. She told me not to worry about anything. She would take care of everything. She would take care of me, and I let her. I was too exhausted to do anything else. As the weeks passed, my world began to shrink. Rachel became my gatekeeper, my translator to the outside world. When my phone rang, she answered it. "Lindsay's resting," she would say. "She's not up for calls right now. I'll let her know you reached out." When colleagues from work tried to visit Rachel, met them at the door with apologies. "She's having a bad day. Maybe next week." When my few friends texted asking how I was doing, Rachel replied on my behalf with updates that painted a picture of slow recovery and needed solitude. I didn't notice at first. I was too sick, too tired, too grateful that someone was handling things so I didn't have to. But gradually the calls stopped coming. The texts grew less frequent. My social circle, which had never been large to begin with, shrank to almost nothing. My world became the walls of my house and the face of my sister. Rachel was all I had left, and she made sure of it. There was one person, however, who refused to be pushed away. Her name was Margaret Lawson. She was 61 years old, a senior colleague at my firm, the kind of woman who noticed things other people missed. I didn't know her well, she worked in a different department, and our interactions had been limited to polite small talk in the break room. But she had been watching me, and she had seen something that alarmed her. On one of my rare days, when I managed to drag myself into the office more out of desperation for normalcy than any real ability to work, Margaret found me in the coffee room. She sat down across from me with her cup and studied my face with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "You were healthy a year ago," she said quietly. "What changed?" I gave her the standard answers. Stress, burnout, possible autoimmune issues. The doctors were still figuring it out. Margaret nodded slowly, but her eyes never left mine. "What changed in your life a year ago?" "Anything new. Anyone new." I told her about Rachel, about the divorce, the move, how my sister had been taking care of me. I mentioned the tea she made every night, how it was supposed to help me sleep. I said it casually like it was nothing. Just a detail, just sisterly love. Margaret's expression shifted. Something flickered across her face, recognition maybe, or fear. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she changed the subject, asked about my treatment plan, wished me well. But I could tell something had changed in her. A few days later, Margaret showed up at my house with flowers. Rachel wasn't home. She had gone out for groceries one of the few times she left me alone. Margaret said she just wanted to check on me, but I noticed the way her eyes moved around the kitchen. She lingered by the spice rack, her gaze settling on something behind the jars of oregano and basil. She asked to use the bathroom, and I heard her footsteps pause in the hallway. Before she left, she took my hand. Her grip was tight, almost urgent. "Lindsay, I'm going to say something strange," she said. "If anything at all feels wrong about what you're eating or drinking, trust your gut. Save a sample. Don't tell anyone. Just do it. Promise me." I didn't understand. I thought maybe she was being paranoid, projecting some worry of her own onto my situation. But something in her intensity reached through my fog. She looked at me like she was trying to save my life. That night, Rachel brought my tea as usual. She set it on my nightstand with that familiar smile, told me to drink it while it was warm, said she hoped I would sleep better tonight. I thanked her. I waited for her to leave, but this time I didn't drink. I stared at the cup for a long time, Margaret's words echoing in my head. Trust your gut. Save a sample. I felt foolish. I felt paranoid. Rachel was my sister. She loved me. She was the only one taking care of me. But I poured the tea into a small glass jar anyway. I hid it in my drawer behind old notebooks and forgotten papers. I told myself it was nothing, just a precaution, just in case. The next night, when Rachel handed me the cup, I watched her more carefully than I ever had before. And for the first time, I noticed something I had missed through all those months of desperate gratitude. Her hands trembled slightly as she passed me the tea. Her eyes stayed fixed on my face as I raised the cup to my lips. She watched me drink with an attention that felt almost hungry. I brought the cup to my mouth. I pretended to swallow, but I didn't drink a single drop. And in my drawer, the jar of tea waited evidence I didn't yet know would save my life. The evidence waited, but my body could not. 3 weeks after I started secretly pouring out the tea, 11 months after Rachel moved into my home, I woke at 3 a.m, unable to breathe. My heart was slamming against my ribs in chaotic, terrifying rhythms that felt like it might explode. My hands were completely numb. My feet felt like blocks of ice that didn't belong to me. I tried to call out, but my voice came as a whisper. I tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't obey. I lay there in the darkness, gasping for air, certain that I was dying. Rachel burst into my room. She took one look at me and grabbed her phone. "Please hurry," she sobbed into the receiver. "My sister is dying. Please, you have to help her." Her voice cracked with what sounded like genuine terror. Tears streamed down her face as she knelt beside my bed, clutching my numb hand in hers. "Stay with me, Lindsay. Stay with me. I can't lose you. You're all I have." The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics swarmed into my bedroom, hooking me up to machines, asking questions I couldn't answer. Through it all, Rachel stayed by my side, the picture of a devoted sister falling apart with worry. In the ambulance, she held my hand and stroked my hair, what was left of it, and told me over and over that everything would be okay. Her performance was flawless. If I hadn't spent those last weeks watching her more carefully, I might have believed it was real. At the hospital, the situation was worse than anyone expected. My liver function was critically impaired. My nervous system showed severe damage. The doctors noted my extreme hair loss, my cognitive confusion, my inability to feel my own extremities. They ran test after test, but nothing fit a clear diagnosis. I was dying, and no one could figure out why. Until one young resident, puzzled by the unusual combination of symptoms, requested a consultation with a toxicology specialist. His name was Dr. James Whitfield. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. He reviewed my chart for a long time before he came to my bedside. When he sat down next to me, his voice was careful, measured, like someone diffusing a bomb. "Ms. Boyd," he said, "I need to ask you some important questions. Have you been consuming any herbal supplements regularly? Any unusual teas? Any substances that weren't prescribed by a doctor?" I was barely coherent, but I understood the question. I told him about the chamomile tea, the tea my sister made for me every night for almost a year, the tea she said would help me sleep better. Dr. Whitfield's face changed. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, confirmation, dread. He excused himself without explanation. Hours passed. I drifted in and out of consciousness, machines beeping around me, nurses checking monitors with worried expressions. Rachel sat in the corner of the room, crying softly, playing her part. When Dr. Whitfield returned, he wasn't alone. 2 police officers stood behind him, their faces grim. Rachel looked up confused, dabbing at her tears. The doctor sat beside me again. This time there was no gentle preamble. Ms. Boyd, we ran a specific test based on your symptom profile. Your blood contains elevated levels of thallium. He paused, letting the word hang in the air. Thallium is a toxic heavy metal. It was once used as rat poison before it was banned for consumer use because it's colorless, odorless, and nearly impossible to detect. The pattern of damage to your body, the hair loss, the nerve damage, the liver failure, is consistent with chronic low-dose poisoning over many months. I heard the words, but my brain struggled to process them. Poisoning. Chronic. Many months. This isn't a disease, Ms. Boyd, Dr. Whitfield continued. Someone has been deliberately poisoning you. I'm required by law to report this to the police. One of the officers stepped forward. Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions about who has had access to your food and drinks. I looked at Rachel. She was staring at the doctor, her face pale, her tears suddenly frozen. For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something beneath it, not fear for me, but fear for herself. That was when Margaret Lawson arrived. She walked into my hospital room like a woman on a mission, carrying a folder under her arm. She introduced herself to the police officers and asked to speak with them privately. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw their expressions change. I saw them look at the photographs she showed them. Photographs I didn't know existed. Later, the police told me what Margaret had done. Weeks ago, when she visited my house, she had noticed things that didn't belong. An unlabeled tea tin, a small glass vial hidden behind the spice rack. She had photographed them secretly, trusting her instincts, even when she couldn't prove anything. She had been watching, waiting, documenting. Because 20 years ago she had lost her best friend to a husband who poisoned her slowly, and everyone had thought it was cancer until it was too late. Margaret had never forgotten the signs. And when she saw them in me, she refused to look away. The officers asked if there were any samples they could test, any evidence that might prove what had been in that tea. And through my fog of confusion and pain, I remembered. The jar in my drawer, the tea I had poured out instead of drinking, hidden behind old notebooks and forgotten papers. I had saved it because Margaret told me to trust my gut. I had saved it even though I felt foolish, even though I told myself I was being paranoid. I told the police where to find it. They sent someone to my house. Hours later, the results came back. The tea in that jar tested positive for thallium. The vial from my kitchen contained thallium sulfate, the same compound, destroying my body from the inside out. The first piece of direct evidence had come from me. My instinct, triggered by Margaret's warning, had saved my life. I lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines, keeping my damaged body alive, and I processed the unthinkable. 365 nights, 365 cups of tea, 365 times my sister had smiled at me and said, "Sleep well," while feeding me poison. The woman who had held my hand in the ambulance, who had cried so convincingly at my bedside, who had whispered that she couldn't lose me, she had been systematically trying to kill me. Every tender gesture was a lie. Every warm smile was a mask. Every cup of tea was another step toward my grave. I thought about all the signs I had ignored, the cold comments, the questions about my will, the way she watched me drink with too much attention, the way she isolated me from everyone who might have noticed something was wrong. I had seen it all. I had chosen not to see, because I wanted so desperately to be loved by my own family that I drank poison with a smile and thanked her for it. But now my eyes were open. I didn't cry. Something harder crystallized inside me, something that had been buried under 36 years of trying to earn love I would never receive. I looked at the police officers standing in my room, and I spoke clearly despite the damage to my body. "I want to know everything," I said. "Every detail of what she did. I want to understand how long she planned this, and I want to be there when she can't lie anymore." The woman who spent her whole life being invisible, being accommodating, being the sister who never caused problems, that woman was gone. I would not just survive this. I would make sure the truth was undeniable, the evidence unshakable, and the consequences inescapable. The truth, when it finally came out, was worse than anything I could have imagined. In the weeks following my hospitalization, as I slowly regained enough strength to sit up and think clearly, the police unraveled the full scope of what my sister had done. Every detail they uncovered added another layer of horror to a betrayal I was still struggling to comprehend. It started with the insurance policy. The $500,000 life insurance policy on my life with Rachel, listed as the sole beneficiary. I had signed it thinking it was a gift, a rare gesture of sisterly care. But the police discovered when it was actually purchased 18 months before my hospitalization. 6 months before Rachel even filed for divorce. Her marriage hadn't fallen apart and left her desperate. She had planned to destroy it. The divorce was never a tragedy. It was phase 1 of a plan to kill me and collect the money. Then came her laptop. Rachel had been so confident in her performance as the devoted, caring sister that she never bothered to cover her tracks. Her browser history read like a manual for murder. Searches for undetectable poison symptoms timeline, queries about thallium lethal dose body weight, and research into how long does chronic thallium poisoning take. Case studies about detection rates and why thallium was the perfect choice, colorless, odorless, rarely tested for, and easily mistaken for autoimmune disease or cancer. She had studied how to kill me the way someone might study for a professional certification, methodically, thoroughly, without a shred of doubt. But the most chilling discovery was the journal on her phone. Hidden in a notes app, she had documented everything with clinical detachment. Week by week, dose by dose, she tracked my deterioration like a scientist observing an experiment. Week 12. More hair loss, complaining of tingling in feet. Doctors still clueless. Week 20 had to increase dose slightly. She's building tolerance, mentioned fatigue to her boss. Week 34. She collapsed at work. Perfect. Everyone thinks it's stress. Nobody suspects me. She had watched me dying and taken notes. The police traced her purchase of thallium sulfate to an overseas chemical supplier. She had paid with a prepaid card bought under a fake name, thinking the trail would be impossible to follow. But her hubris was her downfall. She was so certain of her own brilliance, so confident that everyone saw her as the loving sister she pretended to be, that she never imagined anyone would look closely enough to find the truth. She kept the evidence because she never believed she would be caught. When the police arrived at my house to arrest her, I wasn't there. I was still in the hospital, hooked up to machines trying to heal damage that might never fully repair. But the officers told me later what happened, and I could picture it perfectly. Rachel's mask shattered the moment she saw the handcuffs. She sobbed. She screamed. She clung to the doorframe of my house, the house I had opened to her, the house where she had poisoned me night after night, and she wailed that this was all a terrible mistake. "I would never hurt Lindsay," she cried. "I've been taking care of her." Someone must have broken in and planted that stuff. Maybe it's her ex-boyfriend. Maybe someone at her work who was jealous. This is insane. The police showed her the evidence, her browser history, her journal entries, the purchase records. With each piece, her lies became more desperate and more contradictory. She claimed her laptop had been hacked. She said someone must have stolen her phone and written those notes. When they showed her the journal entries in her own handwriting, she finally went silent. They led her out of my house in handcuffs, still protesting, but with nowhere left to hide. The sister who had smiled while serving me poison, who had held my hand in the ambulance and cried that she couldn't lose me, was finally exposed for what she truly was. 2 days after her arrest, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and saw my parents' number. For a moment, I felt something like hope. Maybe finally they would see me. Maybe this nightmare would be the thing that made them understand what I had endured, not just in the past year, but for my entire life. Maybe they would apologize for decades of neglect, for always putting Rachel first, for treating me like I was invisible while showering her with love she never earned. I answered. My mother's voice was thick with tears, but they weren't tears for me. "Lindsay," she said, her voice breaking. "There must be some mistake. Rachel would never do something like this. She's always been such a good girl. She just made some bad choices. Can't you talk to this prosecutor? Drop the charges. Handle this as a family." I sat in my hospital bed, the machines still beeping around me, my body still damaged from 11 months of poison, and I listened to my mother beg me to save my sister. Not once did she ask how I was doing. Not once did she acknowledge what Rachel had done to me. Her first and only concern was protecting her golden child even now. I was silent for a long moment. Then I spoke, and my voice was steadier than I expected. Mom, she poisoned me for 11 months. She planned my death for a year and a half. She bought insurance on my life before she even pretended her marriage was failing. And your first call isn't to ask how I'm doing, it's to ask me to save her. My mother had no response. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, but she had nothing to say. I continued. I've spent my whole life trying to earn love you gave Rachel for free. I'm done. I forgive you for not seeing me. I've made peace with that. But I don't need you in my life anymore, either of you. I hung up. They called back 3 times. I didn't answer. I never would again. When I was strong enough to leave the hospital, there was one thing I needed to do before I could move forward. I needed to understand. Not to forgive, I would never forgive, but to hear the truth from Rachel's own mouth. To know why. I requested a meeting at the county jail. They brought me to a room with a glass partition, a phone on each side. Rachel sat on the other side, wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair unwashed, her face bare of makeup. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. But her eyes still held that cold calculation I had finally learned to recognize. I picked up the phone. She did the same. Why? I asked. I gave you my home when you had nowhere to go. I trusted you completely. I would have given you anything you asked for. Why? Rachel's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. When she spoke, there was no mask left, just bitter, naked truth. That's exactly why, she said. Because you would have given me anything. Because you were so desperate for my love that you drank poison with a smile and thanked me for it. You were supposed to be nothing, Lindsay, the invisible sister, the one nobody loved. But somehow you had everything I deserved, the career, the house, the stability, the respect. Every time I looked at you, I saw my own failure staring back at me. I couldn't stand it anymore. If I couldn't have what you had, at least I could make sure you didn't have it either. I absorbed her words. 36 years of seeking my family's love, and this was the truth beneath it all. I was never invisible because I lacked worth. I was invisible because my worth made them uncomfortable. I stood up. You had everything I wanted, Rachel. Our parents' love, their attention, their belief in you. But it was never enough, was it? And now you have nothing. I turned to leave. Behind me, Rachel's voice cracked with something that might have been real emotion for the first time in her life. Lindsay, please, I'm still your sister. I stopped at the door. I didn't turn around. No, you stopped being my sister the first night you handed me that cup. I walked out. The door closed between us. We would never see each other again. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the front row where Rachel could see me if she dared to look. She never did. She kept her eyes forward, staring at the judge or the table in front of her, refusing to acknowledge that I was there alive, breathing, refusing to disappear the way she had planned. The evidence presented in that courtroom painted a picture so calculating, so cold, that even the prosecutors seemed shaken by what they had uncovered. The jury heard about the insurance policy purchased 18 months before my hospitalization. They saw the browser history documenting months of research into undetectable poisons. They read the journal entries where my sister tracked my decline with scientific detachment, noting my symptoms, adjusting her dosages, celebrating when doctors remained clueless. They learned about the overseas chemical supplier, the fake identity, the prepaid cards designed to hide her trail. Rachel Boyd was convicted on multiple state and federal charges: attempted first-degree murder, assault with a deadly weapon, insurance fraud, wire fraud, illegal importation of a controlled substance. The combined sentence was 28 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for 18 years. She would be over 50 years old before she could even apply for release. By then, I would have lived an entire lifetime without her. Before the sentencing, I was given the opportunity to deliver a victim impact statement. I had written and rewritten it dozens of times, trying to find words for something that words could never fully capture. When I finally stood before the court, my voice was steady. I didn't cry. I had done enough crying in hospital beds and empty rooms. This moment wasn't for tears, it was for truth. I described the betrayal, the 11 months of smiling poisoning, the cups of tea handed to me with warmth and love while they slowly destroyed my body. I talked about the permanent damage, the nerve pain that would never fully heal, the liver function I would monitor for the rest of my life, the moments of confusion that still caught me off guard. I spoke about what it meant to have your ability to trust murdered by someone who was supposed to protect you. My final words to the court were the ones I had practiced most carefully. My sister didn't just try to kill my body, I said. She tried to kill my ability to believe in love and family and human decency. She failed. I'm still here. I will always be here, and I will spend the rest of my life proving that survival is the best revenge. Rachel was led from the courtroom in handcuffs. Her head was bowed. She didn't look at me. She couldn't. My parents attended one day of the trial the day Rachel was sentenced. I saw them sitting in the back row, my mother clutching my father's arm, both of them looking older than I remembered. They watched their golden child receive her sentence, and then they left immediately after. They didn't approach me. They didn't ask how I was doing. They didn't apologize for 36 years of teaching me that I was invisible while teaching Rachel that she deserved the world. A week later, I received a letter from them. My mother's handwriting filled 2 pages with explanations and pleas. They had no idea Rachel was capable of this. They were devastated by what happened. They just wanted their family back. Could I please find it in my heart to forgive and move forward? Could we please be a family again? I read the letter once. Then I wrote back a single paragraph. You spent 36 years teaching Rachel that she deserved everything and teaching me that I deserved nothing. When she tried to kill me, your first instinct was to protect her. There is no family to go back to. There never was one, at least, not one that included me. I wish you peace, but I need you to find it without me. I mailed the letter. I never heard from them again. I didn't need to. The doctors had been honest with me from the beginning about what the thallium had done to my body. Some damage was permanent. The peripheral neuropathy, the numbness and tingling in my hands and feet might never fully resolve. My liver function, while improved, required ongoing monitoring and daily medication. Some cognitive effects lingered in ways that frustrated me, occasional difficulty finding the right word, moments of confusion that came without warning. I would carry my sister's betrayal in my body for the rest of my life, but I refused to let it define me. I went to physical therapy twice a week. I took my medications without complaint. I learned to live with limitations while refusing to be limited by them. On bad days when my feet burned with phantom pain and my hands trembled too much to hold a coffee cup steady, I reminded myself that the tremors meant I was alive. The scars were real, but so was my determination to build a life worthy of what I survived. I sold the house in Boston. I couldn't stay in the place where I had been poisoned, where I had nearly died, where my sister had smiled at me each night while slowly stealing my life. Every room held memories I needed to escape. The kitchen where she prepared the tea, the bedroom where she handed me the cup, the hallway where she answered calls from my friends and told them I was resting slowly, cutting me off from everyone who might have noticed something was wrong. I moved to Portland, Maine. I found a small apartment overlooking the ocean where I could watch the waves and remember that the world was bigger than the family that had failed me. I returned to work at a new firm part-time at first, then gradually more hours as my health allowed. I began volunteering with a local organization that supports survivors of domestic abuse and family violence. People who, like me, were hurt by those who were supposed to love them. I adopted a cat named Copper who curled up in my lap on difficult days and purred like the world was a safe place. Small steps, genuine steps, a life that belonged only to me. Margaret Lawson retired from the firm 6 months after my trial ended. She moved to a small town just an hour from Portland, and we began meeting regularly for coffee. Never tea. We would never drink tea together. It was an unspoken rule between us, a small acknowledgement of what we had both survived. During one of our visits, Margaret shared more of her own story. She told me about being the invisible one in her family, too, about always feeling like she had to earn love that was given freely to others. She told me about her friend who died 20 years ago, poisoned by a husband everyone trusted gone before anyone realized what was happening. She told me about the guilt she carried for 2 decades, the signs she saw, and dismissed the questions she didn't ask the friend she couldn't save. I couldn't save her, Margaret said, her eyes wet with old grief. But I could help save you. And in some way, saving you saved me too. I understood, then truly understood, that family isn't blood. Family is who sees you, who fights for you, who refuses to let you disappear. Margaret saw me when my own parents never did. She fought for me when my own sister tried to destroy me. That made her more family than the people who shared my DNA ever were. It is autumn now in Portland. The sun is setting over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. I sit on my small balcony with a blanket over my legs. The neuropathy makes my feet cold, even in mild weather. Copper purrs in my lap, content and warm. On the small table beside me sits a cup of tea, chamomile, pure, made by my own hands from a box I bought myself, prepared. In a kitchen where no one wishes me harm, I drink slowly, feeling the warmth spread through my healing body. My hands tremble slightly. They always do now, but I don't mind. I am not the same person I was before. I am scarred, damaged, forever changed. But I am alive. I am free. I am finally completely my own. And for the first time in my life, that is enough. Lindsay's story teaches us something we often forget. The people who hurt us most are sometimes the ones we trust completely. Family is supposed to be our safe place, but for some of us, it becomes the source of our deepest wounds. If you ever feel like something is wrong in a relationship, trust your instincts. Your gut knows things your heart refuses to accept. Never ignore the warning signs just because you desperately want to believe someone loves you. Real love doesn't come with conditions, manipulation, or poison disguised as care. And remember, walking away from toxic people, even family, is not betrayal. It is survival. You deserve relationships that lift you up, not ones that slowly destroy you. Chosen family, the people who truly see you and fight for you, can be more real than blood ever was. If Lindsay's journey resonated with you, if you have ever felt invisible or undervalued by those who should have loved you most, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters, and this community is here to listen. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Thank you for being here, and remember, your worth is not determined by those who fail to see it.